how to get it to work. I know at one point when I was teaching, I was recording stuff and I was uploading to a YouTube channel and so on, so I'll get back in the swing of it here. So this is now recording, but just the MySQL Workbench window. So let me go back here, and I'll just run through the stuff that I've run through so far. I'll just do it real quick since you guys have already seen it. But starting out here, if you've got a local instance 3306, that's the one you want to tap, and you have to put in your chosen password. And by the way, that little checkbox that says Save in Vault, you can use that if you don't want to have to type that password in every time. I just go ahead and just type it in. That way I'll never forget it.
We don't see your screen, by the way.
Oh, gosh,
If you
thank
are
you.
sharing.
Well, the good news is that that was recording. So bad news is that you guys couldn't see it. So let me go ahead and present. Thank you. No, that one. All right, now can you see it?
Yes.
Yep. Okay, awesome. So once having gotten in here, what I did was I opened up, went to File and Open SQL script and navigated to the create databases.sql. I opened it, and once it's open, I can go ahead and do it again here because I haven't done anything to the databases yet. I'll just do the Control-Shift-Enter, and it'll run that whole thing. It's creating databases, creating tables, inserting values into the table, and it's already done. And as before, sometimes the schemas of the navigator window will not refresh the way it ought. And so just go ahead and hit the double arrow here, and then that'll open or refresh things and show you that the databases are back in there again. Okay, so this is where you access all your database objects and so on. Schemas just means databases. And so if I crack these open, and again, AP is the one that we're going to be spending most of our time, and occasionally we'll delve into one of the other ones. I can't remember if I ever did anything before with this OM one or not, but anyway, I'll look at that later. But I know there's some cases where we'll go into EX, but AP, and drop down the tables here. So these are the tables that exist within the database. Remember, this is RDB, so it's a relational database model. These are tables of rows and columns, and they also have relationships to each other, which is all that that means. And if I go further and crack one of these down, like vendors, then I can see, for instance, the columns, which is just basically the organization of the data. Buckets, as I think of it, they're buckets for data into which we can put stuff. Now, any of these you can get more information about. If we hover over this, and by the way, you can get to these and more by right-clicking on these objects too. So for instance, if I want to select all the rows of vendors, this will just run a SQL command, tap on that, and you can see it created the SQL right here, and then here is the result table, or the result grid down here. And it also ran, made a log of that. So it's just like opening up a tab and typing in the command here when you do something like that. There's other stuff you can do too. Like if I go to vendors and then, well, I won't see this until I hover over it, but I've got the little eye. You guys know what that means. It's info. If I tap on that, then it'll show me information about that table. Usually of most interest is what the columns are. There's other stuff that I can do there too. If I go to the next one, the little wrench, you guys know what wrench means. It means you're going to do something, and this is to modify the table. If I tap on this guy, then it takes me to a page where I can see other things going on here. For instance, I can change the table name, and there's some things that are missing here, but I would expect under columns, and what you guys are probably seeing, you're probably seeing the columns of vendors that are lined up here and with little checkboxes next to them. So I don't know why that's not showing up for me. I have noticed several times that under this tight screen that I'm using on this little laptop here, that sometimes things will go missing where you just don't see them anymore. I've been in, SQL editor windows where I could not get the result table to show up no matter what I did until I opened up a brand new tab and then I could get it to show up. So sometimes that does happen. But in any case, here, if you go to the columns tab, you should be seeing the different columns of your table, and that's where you see little checkboxes about like PK, whether it's a primary key. AI means auto incrementer. What else? NN, whether you can nullify the values in there or not. UQ, which is unique, whether or not each value has to be unique in there, which primary key usually is going to be unique and is going to be auto incrementing and so on. So anyway, I mean, I usually don't do this. People who use PHP MyAdmin are used to doing that. A lot of them will go into an interface like the kind that you're not seeing here. Let me try a different one and see what happens. And use these checkboxes and so on and text fields in order to update or modify an existing table or database. I personally almost always just use SQL commands. I mean, it does exactly the same thing. And somehow I feel like I'm more in control when I do that. Let me see if I can pull this down. And it's not wanting me to do that. I don't know. I'm going to have to figure this out later. But okay, there's one. Let's see. Okay, there it is. See how this whole thing was kind of hidden in there? It's just because I'm using a small screen. But this is what I'm talking about. About the columns and then the information about the columns in with these checkboxes. So personally, I recommend not messing with these unless you really know what you're doing. Otherwise, you just stick with using the SQL commands as they're given in the textbook. Okay, also worth noting is like every time you do this, every time you go to either the wrench or the info, you're opening up a new tab over here. And if you're not watching out for it, you can wind up with like a stupid amount of tabs over here. Some of them get hidden over here with a little double arrow and so on. And it gets difficult to figure out what the heck is going on. So it's not a bad idea. As soon as you think you're not using a particular tab anymore, go ahead and close it up. Here's the other one that I just opened. Just, close everything that you're not using at any given time is my recommendation so that things don't get out of hand. So I've already got this one installed. I don't need this SQL file anymore. I'm going to close that too. Let's see, the last one here, it just looks like a little grid here. And if I tap on that, then that's just the same as doing the select all from that table and so on. So that's what that one does. Let's see, anything else from the navigator. This is showing the schemas here, but this is actually a couple of tabs here. If I go to admin here, then there are things like you can start and restart the server, or stop and restart the server here, export data, and so on and so forth. But you don't need to go in here very often usually. Normally you're just going to stick with the schemas over here and leave it at that. So let's see, I already did the select rows. I've got the limit on there right now. Sorry, I'm accessing my notes here to make sure that I don't miss anything. Okay, so let's take another look. I know we've looked at this already, but this guy right here is called the result grid. There's other stuff that you can edit down here too. If I go on the right-hand side, it shows the result grid, but if I go to the form editor, then I can edit data over here. Like I could update data or add new data or something like that. Once again, I don't tend to use this very often. I just go ahead and use the SQL commands, but that's over here as well. But if you're seeing something like this, these tabs over on the right is the way to get back to the result grid. And then this guy down here is called the action output, where it shows the logs for all the commands that are made, all of the queries that are run, and so on. So in the course of doing your exercise files, you're going to need to export from all three of these. Sometimes, most of the time, you're going to want to export directly from the tab up here, the editor tab. Sometimes I will ask for the result of a query, which in that case you're going to be grabbing the result grid down here, and sometimes I'll ask for the action output. So I'll show you what each one of those do when we get there, which we'll get there in just a little bit here. Okay, so in order to access data within one of these tabs here, you have to let Workbench know which table or which database rather you want to be accessing. Otherwise, it does not know what you're trying to do. You could say, yeah, select all from vendors, and it's going to say, yeah, man, I don't know what database that is in. You got to let me know. So one way to do that is what it already did for you here, or did for me, when I did the select all limit 5,000 up here. And you guys, by the way, you might see limit 100 instead. I can't remember if I changed that as a default or not. But one way it does it is with this dot syntax here. So instead of just saying select all from vendors, it does select all from ap.vendors. And you'll see that syntax used later on as well. Sometimes you'll use it in the course of doing joins from a particular SQL command. So if I just do, like, I'm going to delete that and do select all from vendors, and I'm going to do a control enter, right, which is a way of running a single command within this tab. I'm going to get an error message down here. It says select all from vendors, and it's going to give me an error code. Table on, oh wait. Yeah, om.vendors doesn't exist. So basically it's just picking another database. So which database is it picking over here? Well, the way to find that out is by going over to the navigator, into the schemas, and scroll up and down and see which one has been highlighted. And you can do that by seeing which one has been bolded here. And for whatever reason, when I install, I assume it's because it's the last database that got added here. It's been bolded. It's the one that's selected. So it's looking for vendors inside OM. So how to fix that? Well, one way, again, is doing the ap.vendors, then it knows. Or method number 2 of 3 is simply to go up to AP and double click on it. Now on my Mac, when I do this, when I double click on it, it's irritating because it'll, like, every time I double click on it, it opens or closes that accordion. But on Windows, it doesn't seem to do that, so that's a good thing. So now let me try it. I double clicked on AP here. It's bolded, it's been selected or targeted. Now I go over here and try running the script, and it's working. Huge difference, right? That's one of the most common error messages that you're going to get. Other error messages, obviously, if you misspell something, then you end up with an error message. If you forget a quote in a string, or mix and match double and single quotes, you guys already know about that stuff. Those are going to generate error messages too. But probably the most common one, I think, well, other than forgetting to do the semicolon, is just simply to be pulling from the wrong database because you didn't specify or because you forgot to switch the active database or what have you. Let me show you about the semicolon thing. I'm going to do, so I've got select all from vendors. We just ran it. I'm going to do another one here, and I'm going to do select all from invoices, which is another one of the tables inside AP. Now, AP is already selected, so it should work just fine, and it does. No problem. I'm seeing green down here. It gave me the result just fine. Check this out. I'm going to remove the semicolon from the previous command and then go down here, and I'm looking at this line, and yeah, that looks fine to me. I don't see any problems anywhere. And I hit Control Enter, and I get the error. Why? Because I didn't end this statement up here. It's thinking of this thing as a one statement. And again, you guys are used to this sort of thing. If I believe in C-based languages, other than JavaScript, if you forget the semicolon, then it's usually going to be a problem. So that's another one of the most common errors. I go back there and fix that, and I hit Control Enter here, and I get the green back. Everybody's happy. Good to go. Okay, so method number 3 for specifying a database. I'm going to go back here and double click on this. So it's now once again OM database, and these guys no longer work again. I get the error messages because there is no vendors and invoices within OM. So my preferred technique, oh, by the way, I figured out how to zoom in on these guys, so let me do that for you guys. There we go. Generally speaking, when I open up a tab, I'm usually going to be working with one database at a time. Sometimes not. Sometimes I'll switch databases halfway down the page. And so the method that I like to use, because, let me see, how do I express this? So let's say I'm using the AP database up here at the top, and then somewhere in the middle of the page I switch to the OM database. So If I want to go back up and run these scripts, I have to remember to go over here and change back to the AP one, right? But I don't need to do that if I use a very simple command here, which is the use clause. So remember the clauses, commands are done in all caps. And if I just do use AP like this, even though OM is selected down here, I'll go down to select all from vendors and do Control Enter. And, oh, I need to run this one first, sorry. So I need to do Control Enter here on use AP. There we go. And when I do that, I don't know if you guys can see, but it is now selected and activated AP with the boldness, and now, of course, these guys work again. So any one of those techniques is fine. I like doing this one, so if halfway down the page I decide I need to use a different database within the same tab, then down here I can use, use OM, and then whatever commands I have down underneath that, we'll pull from that once I get that active or executed. So anyway, this is the one that I prefer, and I believe that this is the one used by the textbook as well. I can't remember for sure. Okay, so let's do some simple commands here. I'm going to get rid of this guy. And this one, what I'm going to do now, you can follow along with typing, or if you want to, you can just watch, because this is some of the same stuff that the chapter exercises are doing, except not exactly the same commands, just something close to them. So you'll get a chance when you go through the chapter exercises. So I'm going to do the select all from invoices here. And this splat here is the all. I guess that's an operator. But you can also pull individual things. So if you do the splat operator here, select all from invoices, it's going to grab you all of the columns, and it's going to get you all of the entries within those columns, at least until it hits your whatever limiter you've got set, whether it's 5,000 or 100 or what have you. You can also select individual columns if you want to, by separating them with, doing the column names, identifiers, and separating them with a comma. So instead of doing select splat from invoices, let me do another one. I'm going to do select. And this is where I'll start to, if I've got to start having things separated by commas, sometimes I'll start putting them on their own lines. Instead of, a simple statement like this, I tend to do one line. But if I want to do pull two, I might go down to the next line. Now the tab here, this is not, space sensitive. The white space here doesn't matter at all. So whether or not you indent, it's totally up to you. It's not like YAML or something like that where you have to watch out for it. So let's say I want to pull in, well, I want to start comparing invoice total with payment total down here, because the difference between those is what, each of these guys owes me still. And it looks like at least the ones that are showing
Excuse me, sir?
Yes, go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but which file is this vendors from?
Well, which database you mean?
Yes.
It's from the AP database. So if you do like use AP at the top and then hit Control Enter, then you'll be able to grab from invoices or vendors, which are the two most commonly used tables in here.
Okay, and these tables are in the create databases one that we opened?
Well, if you ran that script that created the databases, then yes, it inserted these tables into the database and then inserted all of the data into the tables.
Okay, thank you. I couldn't find where the run the script button was.
Okay. Yeah, so if you're running a whole page, you can use this first lightning bolt or hit Control-Shift-Enter. And then if you just want to run one line, or not one line, but one code block, then just Control-Enter will do it. Okay, so are you able to access the stuff inside AP now?
I'm just not sure how you get to the point where you have this this sort of like command line, because I'm still looking at the script after I clicked the.
Hang on, let me stop sharing for a second. I'm going to leave the recording going. Let me pop back over, and if you'd share screen with me real quick. Okay, so did you run this page?
Yes, I clicked this button and then all of these went green.
Okay,
These
cool.
actions.
So let's open up a new tab. You can go to where you see the little where it says SQL plus. It's the first icon in that row of icons. Okay, that opens up a new tab, and then type in the use AP.
Where
No, you don't have to use the asterisk there. Just use AP semicolon, and then Control Enter. All right, cool. I see green down below, so you're good. To help out, go over to where it says Management on the left side there on the navigator pane. And is there another tab that says Schemas?
I actually do not see that.
Should be under, next to administration schemas.
Yeah, I can barely see it on my screen right now. See, okay, so yeah, there it is down there. So you see where it says administration down at the bottom, like below where you are right now? Switch over to schemas.
Right.
There you go. Now you should be able to see the databases that you've got there. If you don't, click on the little double curved arrow next to where it says schemas up top. There you go. Now you can see them all.
Okay.
Cool. Now I think you're good.
Okay, thank you.
You got it. By the way, some of the other stuff over here, you just want to make sure that you don't drop it, especially the sys database. This is the database that is the default one, and it kind of you kind of need that for the rest of them. So don't drop that one. Okay, so now that you've got into AP and you're seeing this over here, try doing the select all from invoices with Control Enter, and see if you get this result table down here. And again, I think there are 123 entries here. You may wind up with only 100 if you've got a limit of 100 by default. No, 114, I guess. I can always see that. Like I was going up here to count, and then I was kicking myself because it shows you right down here. If you do like a select all from invoices, you see where it says 114 rows returned. That'll let you know exactly how many entries, at least how many entries got returned. Also notice, like I've got an open statement down here without a semicolon. That doesn't, affect the ones that came before it. I can still do select all from invoices, and it works just fine. What matters is if I forget about the semicolon before that, and go over here and try running that script, that's when I get the error message. Okay, so next up, I'm going to go ahead and choose two different columns instead of getting all of them. Let me go ahead and run this one more time so I can actually see the columns. So they're invoice total and payment total. Okay, cool. So something else I want to show you about the schemas panel over here is that you can copy stuff from that panel into the SQL tab over here. So if I go up to AP, for instance, and we're doing invoices here. So if I open that up and open up columns, and I want to grab the invoice total first. So I scroll down until I see invoice total. And if you need to, you can pull this over a little bit so you can see those a little bit better. And just double click where it says invoice total, and it'll put it here right where your cursor was. So I think yesterday or the day before, I was showing like we were concatenating a couple of things. Like I think it was this guy here. Let's go ahead and do this real quick. I think it was select concat, and then we had like the let me do this real quick from vendors. Yeah, it was like vendor contact last name and vendor contact first name. And I kind of made a show of having to type all that stuff in before, but you can actually use these over here, which can help when you have to type in like these long verbose names over and over again. So if I want to concatenate those names again, let me pull this out a little further. There they are. I just double click on this guy here and then go ahead and do the string that I wanted to do in the middle, and then double click on the first name. And if I've got that stuff over here or open over here, then that's a heck of a lot easier than typing all that stuff out from scratch. Let me go ahead and complete the statement as long as we're here and try it out, and it works just fine. So remember about that. Sometimes if you've got these really long names, references to deal with, sometimes double clicking on these and just having the tables open over here so you can do that can be a help. So anyway, I was kind of in the middle of doing this, so I was bringing a select invoice total, and next up I want to have, go back up to invoices, I want payment total, and I'll outdent again from invoices. Now let's try that. So in this case, instead of getting all of that stuff, I just get this stuff, which is really important, because if you're asking to retrieve all of the data in a table every single time you make a query, that's going to be really expensive performance-wise, especially if you're running something like a web app, maybe you have a lot of visitors. You really want to be able to select smaller amounts of data. And there are other things that you can do to help with this stuff, including indexes, which we'll get to, I don't know, at some point, either later on this term or next term, something like that. You can use that to shorten the process as well. So in any case, we've got select invoice total and payment total, and we've got the two columns there. Let me copy this guy. The chapter exercise also has a couple of functions in it. Now we've already looked at one. This guy here is a function, right? Concatenation. And then I can't remember which one. Does the textbook use count, perhaps? Min, max, something like that. Maybe sum. Let's check out sum. So if I do sum and put invoice total into parentheses, what it's doing here is it's not going to be returning all of these entries. It's going to be adding them all up. Now there's something that's, you need to be able to do that on all of them, right? Because if I do sum invoice total, it's going to be returning one line. It's going to add them all up and just give me one line. If I leave payment total as it is, it's going to be a whole bunch of different lines, 114 of them, right? So I expect this to give me an error. And no, it actually did it. Interesting. So I think it just grabbed the last of the payment totals and put it in. Okay, so yeah, that's what it did. Never mind. In any case, this is what I intended to do, where you're adding up both of these, like so. So it added up all the invoice totals and it added up all the payment totals, and I'm seeing a much larger number there. It's kind of a summary query, right, where you're getting just one entry back instead of getting all the entries in the database, or in the table rather. You're just kind of running an operation on them in sequence until you wind up with a total result. And of course you can have more fun with it from there. Let me go ahead and copy this and paste it down again. So we started out with this guy here, which was just returning. Actually, we started out with this one where we grabbed everything, and then we grabbed just two columns, and then we did a summary so that we're just doing the sum row of each of these, and you can have fun from there. This might have been something that we did last time, but you can return just a string. So something like that. And notice all these entries, you just separate them by commas. It's just the way it works. It's very simple syntax. And then we'll do another sum here. And this time I'm going to subtract the payment total from the invoice total, which should be the total amount that everyone still owes us that they haven't paid on. So within the parentheses here, I'll do invoice total minus, and then once again, if I were thinking about it, then I could go over here and double click here instead of having to type that stuff in. And you can also use the as clause to give that column a particular name. Notice that these two here just have the name of the actual function that I put in here. So this one says sum invoice total, sum payment total. So instead of like pulling from the name of a column that exists in that table, it's generating them on the fly based on the commands that we did. But if these look bad, which they do, you can use the as keyword and name it something else. So like as, I don't know, outstanding receivable, something like that. And there we go. So there's the sum invoice total, sum payment total, and then the string, and then the outstanding receivable, which we put in there, and then the result of those subtracting one from the other. So this is not stuff you have to remember. I wanted to show you some examples that are at least similar to the examples that they show you, or that you'll be building, actually, that you'll be scripting at the end of Chapter 2. It's kind of like a continuation of the whirlwind introduction in Chapter 1. Chapter 2 at the end of when you do the exercises, it just got a bunch of stuff in there that maybe we haven't learned about yet. So this is what this stuff looks like. Just, basic functions. Like I said, I think they use different functions here. I'm certain they use a count. And I can't remember if they use sum or min, max, something like that. But anyway, that's the idea. So let's see, what else do we need to look at here? These are SQL additions here. So these little icons over here, you kind of use these in order to show or hide certain pieces of the interface. I don't usually mess with these first two, but this third one here, and the only reason that I hide is because I'm on a site, like a small screen, and I'm sharing screen. So stuff that I can get out of the way, I tend to want to. But you'll probably have this one open by default, and I just want to show the snippets thing over here. The snippets here can show you some commonly used commands in terms of how the syntax works. So if you're forgetting how to do an inner join, for instance, or a left outer join between two tables or more tables or whatever, it can help you out with that. And remember the DML versus DDL syntax that we were talking about, DML being data manipulation language. Ha, see, I got it that time. And DDL, data definition language. The first one has to do with manipulating data. The second one has to do with manipulating the structure of the data. And you can drop down and choose, and they've got different snippets for each of these. So like here, I'm just going to stay inside the DML, and here's the select syntax. So again, this was showing us all these select commands, but I still don't really get it, and I don't remember how it works. One, you can double click on this, and it'll just kind of show you the syntax structure and all the different, you can do where, group by, order by, etc., like the different possibilities within that. Or you can right click on it, and you can take that snippet and you can actually put it into the editor panel here. So let me make sure that my cursor is in the right place so I don't put it in the middle of something else. But yeah, right click and then insert snippet at cursor, and then it throws all that stuff into here, where sometimes that can be useful, where you just want the whole thing chunked in there, and then you can get rid of most of it and just put in the stuff that you need, like replace their brackets with your actual stuff. So that can be useful. Some students, and I don't use them much, and a lot of students don't, but I have had students before who say they wind up using it a lot when they can't remember how something is structured. So just know that it's there. I'm going to hide mine again. And I think, let's see, we've gone over the common errors, misspelling a word, omitting a quotation mark, forgetting the semicolon, etc. And yeah, I think we're down to the last thing here, which is I want to show you how to export and save this stuff, because you're going to have to do that to submit the exercises to me. Now, the most common thing that's going to happen is that you're going to have one or more of these, usually just one, but sometimes more, of these editor tabs here. And what I'll ask you to do is just run through the different exercises, build all these different, like each one you can separate by semicolons. And sometimes I might ask you to like put little comments right before them too. Like this is, exercise number 1, and this is exercise number 2 from that page, so and so on. but something like, otherwise it'll just be statements separated by semicolons here. It's very easy to save this as an SQL file. Right next to the Open Script button here, which will open a script file in this editor, by which it means this tab. And right next to that, you see this little guy right here, save the script to a file. And if you click that, it's going to save it as type SQL. And I'll try to always remember for each one of these exercises to tell you what you should name the file, but almost always it's going to be your last name, dash, and then the chapter number. So like if I were finishing up the chapter 2 exercises, then I would probably be asked to call this Vispo CH2, and it will add the .sql on there. So I'll just go ahead and put it in the same folder here, and I save this, and then later on, if I close this and I want to open it up again, then I can go ahead and go to File and open the SQL script, and there it is, and I open it up, and there's all the stuff in there, just the way we saved it, as you would expect. So again, that's going to be almost all the time. I'm going to be asking you guys to do that. Sometimes I will be asking you to save the results grid or the action output. So let me go ahead. I'm going to run, let's see, which one do I want to run? I guess the last one that we just did. I'll run that one. No, let me run one that has more than one entry. I'll just go ahead and do these guys here. So that's the one where I'm selecting 2 columns here. So let's say I ask for the result grid. So what you're going to want to do is, and these are the instructions that are written out in that material that's under class materials. It says like how to export and submit your files from blah, blah, blah. So you just click somewhere in here. So you've selected some entry somewhere. And then you can select all by doing a Control A. If you're on Mac, then you do Command A instead, right? Otherwise, if I don't want to do the Control A, what I can do is I can select something up here, and then I can shift click on the last entry. But I just like just doing Control A. We'll select all this stuff here, all the entries. And then I'm going to do a right click. It doesn't matter. Once you've got them all selected, it doesn't matter where you right click. It's going to be selecting all of these guys. And you're going to be presented with a series of options for copying the row. So when we do the logs, the action output, it's just going to be copy row. But for this one, for the result grid, I'd like you to go down to this one here, which is the second to the last one. So I don't know if you guys have worked with CSV files, but the CS stands for comma separated, but it doesn't actually have to be comma separated. It can be tab separated instead. So these entries will have tabs in between them. And with names means that in a comment up at the very top, it'll have those column names, invoice total and payment total. So this 5th one down, the second one from the bottom, is actually the one that I would like on those occasions when I ask you to grab the result grid. So I'm going to copy this row with names, tab separated, and it's now on the clipboard. And then all you need to do is paste it into any plain text editor that you've got on your machine. Let's see here. Well, let's see. I've got just Notepad++ here, which you guys should all have too, by the way, if you don't. And there it is. And oh look, JavaScript. So I'll just make a new file. And by the way, I think you guys are probably used to using VS Code for your projects. So you can use that too. It doesn't really matter. Anything that can handle a plain text file, and just paste the clipboard in. Here are all the entries. These are tabs in between. There's 2 columns. And then up at the top, there's the comment with the 2
we can't see what you're doing if you're trying to show it.
Ah, thank you. Thank you. So let me switch the share here real quick. And let me also switch over here. I really appreciate you guys letting me know that whenever something like that happens. I'm just going to go ahead and change to the entire screen yet. That way I don't have to keep doing it. Okay, so I just went over to again, any plain text editor, and pasted what I copied from the result grid. And here they are, those two columns. They're separated by a tab. And then up at the top here, there's the comment line with the two column names. And I'm going to save this. And again, let's say this is for chapter 2. I would do like Bispo ch2, and this time instead of saving as an SQL file, it's going to be a CSV file. And I don't even know where it's saving to here. Let me see if I can get back to my documents here. IS261 files. Okay, let's try that one. So if you save it like this as a CSV file, then I will be able to open a spreadsheet program like Calc from LibreOffice. And I should be able to open that. Oh, it's thinking about it. No, it's not. There we go. So this is what I'll do when I ask you to export one of those. And I mean, okay, Calc doesn't do a perfect job because it kept that hash in there. I think if you open them up on, what is it, Numbers on the Mac, that it'll be smart enough to not do that. But anyway, that's the idea, so that I can see what the results of, the results table are. So let me do the next and final one here. And I better change this to grab the entire screen. And back to MySQL Workbench. Okay, final thing here is, and this is, pay attention to this one because this is exactly what I asked you to do for this current exercise assignment for Chapter 2. First thing is, if you've got stuff that you've been doing before Chapter 2, like I've got all this stuff in the log here going back to who knows when, right? The first thing that you want to do is right-click anywhere in here and just clear it out. So this is before you start like that, the current exercises, right? Just take out all that stuff and then do whatever the chapter asks you to do up here, right? Sometimes it'll ask you to select more than one at the time and blah, 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 and get this stuff down here. And then other than that, you do basically the same process once you're done with those exercises and you've done all the stuff in here. And again, sometimes it might be deliberately creating an error message and then fixing it like that. Then I just go down here, click anywhere, any of these entries, do Control-A, select all, right-click, and this time you can just go right to the top one. You don't need to do any fancy copying, just copy the whole row. Same process other than that, go to your plain text editor, create a new file, and paste it on in there. And then save. I guess I will call this Bispo ch2 logs or something like that. And again, .csv. I'll save it to the same place. And then again, oh, where'd it go? Oh, there it is. I should be able to open the file here, and there's the logs.csv, and open up, and click OK. I don't know why it keeps making it do it twice. There we go. And you can see everything's nicely separated by the tabs and so on. Actually, there's some strange, no, that's just because of the numerical formatting. So anyway, this is like that last thing I did. That's the way you're going to actually be doing Chapter 2, which is the very first of these exercise files to submit. So any questions about those, either exporting the SQL file or doing the copy and paste to get the other stuff in there? every so often, I think there must be a quicker and easier way to get these guys out of here, get them actually exported, but I don't think I've found it yet. If anybody does find it, let me know. If there's like a quick and easy way to grab this stuff and like export it all as a CSV file or something like that, I don't think there is. At least I haven't come across it yet. Okay, so I've wound up taking up a bit of your time tonight again. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.
Is Excel okay for the CSVs?
Yeah, in fact, you don't need to open it up in a spreadsheet at all. All you have to do is save it as a CSV, and then